Hello car lovers, this is Cars at 100. My name is Leo, and today I wanted to talk about how is it to own this car for 6 months. So I have owned this car now for 6 months, and I can tell you exactly how I feel about this car, what are the pluses, what are the minuses of this car, and hopefully this video will be helpful for you if you're gonna get Volkswagen Jetta Gli 2017, or the model that is gonna come out right now, 2018, is gonna have the same body, but they're gonna get rid of the manual gearbox. For those who are enthusiastic a lot about this car and driving it manually, gonna be a little bit disappointed. But for the purposes of why I got this car, which I'm gonna mention later on in this video, I found useful to be more the DSG dual clutch transmission that this car comes optional with. So basically a couple of things with this car. First of all, I really like this car. Why? Because it makes you feel good when you drive this car. So that's the biggest plus that you have to this car, and the biggest I think reason why a lot of people gonna get the small car, which is gonna be a type of car that you can use every day, and at the same time drive in a city like this. I live in Brooklyn, New York. Maybe you will recognize some of the streets that I'll be driving around. This is Shipshead Bay area in Brooklyn, New York. So basically what I want to say is that in terms of driving this car every day, and I drive like 30-40 miles a day, in terms of driving every day, this car is very first of all driver engaging. Even though you don't drive this car more than 30-40 miles an hour sometimes, still you get the sense of the chassis through the seats. You sit low, you have this good steering wheel in your hand. That's a second plus, of course, when you drive this car. Also, it is comfortable. It is not very rough on the road. Suspension is not stiff, so the car makes you feel good. So it's basically a driver car, but at the same time it's very usable, it's very practical, and practicality is this third plus in this vehicle, I feel, because the practicality thing is pretty good. You have a decent sized boot in the back, trunk, like we say here in the United States, and it fits a lot of my things and groceries. Sometimes we even transferred a couple of construction tools, so it really does give you the option to make it more practical than it really seems to be. And the seats in the back drop down, and if anything, even without seats, you can drop down middle section and put something long from the trunk to this towards the passenger section. So in terms of practicality, this car gets a huge plus. What else is good here? Also gas mileage. To compare this car to the past vehicle that I owned, Infiniti Q40, that had 3.7 liters, 330 horsepower, and weight of almost 3,800 pounds, I would say that this vehicle is much more economical and usable compared to that vehicle. Why? Because I used to fill up, for example, here we have a gas that is a little bit more expensive, more than $3 a gallon, and I put premium in this vehicle. That would be a minus that I tell you later on. But so basically this car really is usable when you have when you drive every day. So if you drive every day, you get gas mileage to be lower, but with this car you actually kind of saving up a little bit. So it gives you this feature where you basically can drive it slow and it doesn't spool the turbo. I'm gonna get to that as well. So basically when it doesn't spool the turbo that much, it is kind of an economical mode. It is hard to drive sometimes in that mode, this vehicle, but you know what it is? It's when you don't need to drive spiritually, you know, it really saves gas. So in terms of that, that's pretty good. So to compare to my Infiniti Q40, 240, I used to fill up premium also as well in that vehicle, but that car ended up for me to be almost $200 a month, almost. This car is a little bit over 150, so even if I drive sensibly and regularly, so it is a little bit more economical. But you know, something that you have to know, that I never pushed Infiniti to the limit, because that engine is really powerful, and on the streets of New York you don't really use that car that much, unless you go somewhere into PA or on a highway that you travel a lot. You can push the car a little bit more, and here this Jetta is more usable in my opinion. And as far as my experience goes right now with these two cars, I can tell you that this small car, that's why I love small cars, is more usable in a city like this, because you can drive this car the way you want to drive this car. You don't have to go crazy and fast with this car, because it's small, because it's light, because it's not that powerful. You can use that power. Let me get to the pluses also. It would be fourth plus on this list, and I think that should be on the top of the list of this car. For this car, you can hear the turbo in this car, so that's, I think, the biggest plus for those enthusiasts that gonna get the faster Jetta. That regularly Jetta doesn't come that fast. There are regular Jettas that had turbo engines, but they're not as quick as this one. This is Jetta Gli. So what this car gives you, feeling of turbo spool. So when you put the foot down a little bit more than usual, first of all, the pedal is really long here, so you get the option of how much you want to put it here, so it's pretty cool as well. I would say that that's also plus. So when you press pedal a little bit gradually, more, you start hearing the whistling sound. It is not loud like in Supras that I tuned to the 1000 horsepower, but you can understand that this car only 235 horsepower. But when the turbo spools, and when you let off the gas, it does a little bit like that blow off. So that, even to remember, you see I'm smiling. So basically this car gives you that feeling that when you drive this car, it makes you feel like turbo is there, and I really appreciate that in this car. So the biggest plus would be the turbo sound. So it's very engaging, very driver focused, also driving experience and feel. Also, what is the plus in this car? So in terms of the engine, it's one of the top engines in the world, one of the top four-cylinder engines that produces that much power, but without having that much of a cost to maintain this car. So this car is one of the top engines that German manufacturer Volkswagen or other manufacturer four-cylinder produces, or any other engine, 6-cylinder or 8-cylinder. This is one of the best engines in the world, AE888. You can Google that. This engine goes into the it's a different layout of the turbo and chambers, but it goes into GTI, it goes into Golf R, it goes into many different Volkswagen vehicles. So it's a very focused in terms of the performance and in terms of reliability as well. This engine is really good in terms of that as well. In terms of reliability, they say it's a really good. So it's a good engine in being being driver proof. You know, it's not gonna break on you, and hopefully not in future. So basically, just to go over all the pluses: driving feel, steering wheel, turbo sound, then practicality, gas mileage, and also the driving factor, the usability of this car. It's all the pluses. Now let me touch on the minuses. The first biggest minus that you can have with this car is the build quality. Now, build quality, as expected, when I was getting this car, when I anticipated on getting this car, my biggest gripe was, of course, full front-wheel drive. But later on, I found out that that's actually okay, compared to how this car is built in terms of the how it's manufactured. So this car is manufactured in Mexico. What that means is that you're gonna feel and you're gonna hear, you're gonna see little imperfections in the car, and there are many imperfections with other cars as well, but here is this type of things that, you know, like really you know, get annoying to you. For example, I hear the sound from the back right. When I go over the bump, sometimes it clicks and I can't do anything about it. It is a weird experience, and I tried to look at it. I tried to take it apart in the back as much as I can without voiding the warranty. I tried to look at it. I tried to see what's going on, what rattles without taking it to a dealer, and I couldn't find it. You know, it sometimes rattles in the right, sometimes in the middle section, so it's pretty annoying. So I think that's a build quality that you're gonna have to deal with. Also, there are seams that don't line sometimes correctly in the window section. I had to correct those as much as I could. I can't take the car apart. I mean, maybe I will carefully, and you know, I'm not gonna do any damage. I'm gonna try to, but sometimes it gets annoying with all these things. For example, you know, exhaust is not straight. I don't know what's with it. Maybe it's a factory thing. It's a little bit not straight. With all the vehicles that I've seen, its exhaust is pretty straight. So that's another thing, which I haven't done anything to exhaust. It is kind of weird. So that's another minus. I mean, in terms of the build quality, but everything else it seems to be fine. Another minus would be the just having this car front wheel drive. Maybe that's a minus, but maybe that's a plus as well. I'm not sure yet how to put it, but when you really push this car, sometimes it oversteers a little bit. I mean, it torque steers a little bit. I wish the Volkswagen would address this car, because this car has been on the market for very long with this engine and with this engineering. So I wish they could have engineered this car a little bit better without having a torque steer. But it's a mediocre, but it's still there, you know. Cars coming out right now absolutely without no torque steer, having 300 horsepower Civic Type R. But what I'm trying to tell you is that this car could have been engineered a little bit more in terms of the torque steer. Also, what I wanted to mention as being a minus is not having much of the features to engage with. What I mean, I can't manipulate this vehicle in terms of how it behaves, in terms of the throttle, in terms of the steering, in terms of the transmission or the suspension, which I kind of regret in a way not having, because it would have added to the enjoyment of using this car and driving this car daily. So I think that's another minus to this car. It could be also be a plus, because there is a difference in opinion. Some people just want to jump inside the car and have fun with it the way it is, but some people like me, I would want a little bit of you know, options in terms of how the car behaves sometimes. When I remember when I had the Nissan Sentra back in the day, first Nissan Sentra, first leased car that I had was Nissan Sentra SR. Now that car had, if you can believe, that car had 3 options. So basically you had the eco mode that would dim the throttle. It would be very, you know, soft throttle. It would not engage as quick as you would press the gas pedal. So that was the plus of it. You could save gas with that mode. Then you had the sport mode that would make throttle more responsive than the normal mode that you get usually when you start the car, when you start driving. So that was also plus. So if you wanted the spiritual driving or driving quick and engaging, you would put into sport mode, and that would be kind of cool. Even though the car had a CVT transmission, you got used to it. I got used to it, and I started liking this car because of the options that I could have, so in terms of that as well, that is one of the things I think that this car is lacking. And maybe car that comes out in 2019, the car that will replace this body style and this technology, will make a better vehicle that will have more options in terms of the throttle, steering, suspension, or the transmission as well. Hopefully, let's see that. Also, I think I skipped on the one of the pluses that this car has is the steering feel. Steering feel I wanted to mention, and I think it's very important to mention the steering wheel feel. Maybe I'm biased to this vehicle, maybe I got used to it, but after jumping from M235i BMW X-Drive that I drove, that my friend Vlad, my friend, has, I really felt that my steering wheel, when I jumped back here, I really felt that my steering wheel was better driver engaged. I felt that it was stiffness was at the point where I really liked it, and the driver feedback, it felt like it was a hydraulic steering, which is interesting compared to BMW, which had much softer steering than my Jetta M235i. That is a more performance car. This is M-tuned car from BMW, but I think the steering on the BMW, especially on M235i, is less engaging and driver focused than my Jetta, if you can believe. It's up to you if you think that that's if BMW has a better steering or if Volkswagen does. But I think, in my opinion, I felt that my steering was better. Maybe I drove this car every day, I don't know, but I felt that my steering was better, and I was glad actually to come back to this vehicle.